Hello YouTube. I've been busy, as you can see. There's no engine. It's currently in the bike. A few reasons I've done this off camera. I'll let you in on it all. Is because there was a lot of faffing around. I will do a full rundown of what we've done. As you can see, we are now at this stage. So, what we've had to do since last filming was I took the engine off the stand, off the bench, sorry, fully completed. I've then jacked it up using an axle stand and precariously getting it in line. Put this bottom bolt through first. This one fits just fine. Then you can tilt the engine towards and get it in here. What I did find is this engine is slightly wider, and at first when I properly measured it, it was 3 mil wider than the space between the frame. So I took 2 millimeters off each side, give me a little bit of slack. But since fitting the engine, I've come to realise that I remember these spacers that butt up against the engine. Then you put the bolt in, do it up, yada yada. These allow for quite a bit of slop. I mean, I've noticed on the other side, temporary bolt by the way, that where the bike was painted black, you can still see the black on this spacer, and you can see where it originally sat, which is too far out at the moment. So when I take this engine back out, I am going to be taking more off of here and here, same on the other side. You did notice I've damaged the wires down there for the generator. Yes, I did clip them with the flat wheel on the grinder while I was taking that edge down. Very much disappointed myself, did swear quite a bit. So I've got to fix that. I've got to change the plugs over on that anyway. So there was wiring involved, I've just now got to do it in a more precarious place. Right. So, the other things to note when doing this that I found is this corner here is rather close to the cover. Now this cover is aftermarket, so I don't know if it would be the same, but I have spoke to other people about who've done this conversion, and they did say something about having to trim down the frame a little bit, and I reckon it is just taking the corner off of this. I mean, it does clear, but it is very close. So you know, it's probably worthwhile just taking a file and just taking off that corner there. This lines up just about. This is the original bolt for the 5EB head. Obviously the 5EB head mounts into this part. Now you don't use this one, this is unused on the SL, but as you see, if I hold it in line, it's slightly off center. Now I did have to sort of hold the engine, you know, down a little bit, and I could get that bolt in, you know, not a great amount of force, and it wasn't like over stressing it or anything like that, but I did have to hold it in a position to get that bolt in. And these bolts here are, I don't know if you can see it off camera, well you can quite well actually, they're a bit off centre. Now there's a few options we can do here. That bolt hole is a smaller pitch than the original 5EB bolts that go through here. I shall just grab one. took them to work today and hope to find some sort of replacement and work out what I had going on. So this is the original engine mount bolt for the 5EB. Quite a fine thread on there. Fits nice and, well, I say snug, it's still quite a lot of slop but in that hole anyway. And you then do that up, it pinches against the engine, takes the space up, and you do this up, as you know. But it's not that thread, it is actually this thread. Now this is a head bolt from the cylinder head from the other engine. Now obviously it's not a bolt you can use, but it's the same pitch thread as what's in there now. I mean, I can screw this in there, and I did do when I was lining up the engine last night. That's how I know it's the same thread. So that goes in there fine. Now there's a couple of ways around this. If you really want, I'm sure you could probably drill that out to take one of these bolts, but to be honest, I don't think you really need to. It lines up enough to get the bolt through, especially if you use a smaller pitch one. Now I know a smaller pitch one is going to have quite a lot of slop in there. This bolt's thinner than the actual thread. I'll get that to focus. Yeah, there. But if I just use the thread bit, there is quite a bit of slop. But then on this bolt, there's quite a bit still too. So I'm thinking, rather than having like custom offset spacers made up, or you know, drilling and tapping that hole out bigger and level, why don't we just use a normal bolt with that size thread on? We can use some Loctite, screw it in, do it to the torque setting. That should be alright. I do need to take off some more material here and repair this. So the engine has got to come out again. Now, getting on to the main reason why these don't fit is this rear mount. Now the rear mount is so close. It is unbelievably close. You can just see through the hole there. It doesn't quite match up. Now I'm going to mark this all up as best I can, and I'm going to take this engine, once it's out, I'm going to cut out some material here and fit the bracket or insert type tube, a thing that I've been able to source through Facebook. Now what I was going to do before, the idea is we've got an old scrap engine there. No one's going to want that apart from the odd bit, like, you know, the sump, which is SL anyway, but, you know, the cover and maybe the clutch and what have you. So no one's going to want a cracked liner unless they want to. I wouldn't want to sell them a cracked liner anyway. So I was going to cut that bit off of the other engine and kind of, you know, shave it up and make it fit, but because I wasn't happy about the two block setup where you have a block welded on, yada yada, because there's that space in the middle, and I just don't like the idea of there being nothing there when it's kind of a pinch bolt type setup. So what we've got, I'll just grab it. Now the guy did say to me that he can have these made up, but he had one spare. But that's it basically. It's a tube with a flat edge. So I've got frog in my throat again tonight. Yeah, it's a tube with a flat edge with a bolt hole, obviously the size of the engine mount bolt. It fits in there lovely. It's exactly the same length. So what you got to do is mark all this up. I don't quite know how I'm going to do it yet. I will explain it in a video after I've done it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this off camera because it's a lot of faffing around. And quite frankly, I could do with not having to deal with a camera as well at the same time. I will give a detailed description of exactly what I've done, like I've done now with the fitting of the engine. So that's it really. I got a bit carried away and late into the last night thinking, well, you know, the engine's in, sweet, fantastic, lovely. I want to make it look like a bike again. So on went the front end. This is faded and a bit nasty. Sticker's missing, which is blatantly obvious. I'm going to try and get another one. I'm waiting for a screen. But I did just put that on there because one, it won't need to come off again. Not for a while anyway, because this being red plastic, I don't know whether to paint it with my painting skills, especially on plastics and stuff like that, are not great. Yeah, I can do a rocker cover and a coil plate cover and this, that and the other, but you know, I'm having trouble with the under tray bit at the moment. I painted it. I'd rubbed it down. You know, it had been painted before, but I done your usual, rub it down, you know, make sure it's all nice and got a key, and then I'll give it a bit of primer and then some paint and then some lacquer, and I left it decent times in between all times, and it wasn't hot. It wasn't cold, and all the usual stuff. And for it being sat around in my garage for quite a while. At first, I noticed when I picked it up, thinking, you know, it's blatantly hard paint by now. I ended up leaving a fingerprint in it. I'm like, how is it still not set? It's still not hard. So I left it even longer, and when I come back to it, there's a great crack starting to run through it. And this problem has occurred with my car as well, which is there on the screen. And the thing is, I've painted some bits and pieces on that are plastic, and they've done the same. So I'm thinking, well, it's obviously something I'm doing, so I don't know. But this happened to this tailpiece, and so I rubbed it down, got rid of all the cracks and stuff, and this, that, and the other, and I plastic primed it again. And in the time it took me to go upstairs and grab a coffee and come back downstairs, it was reacting really badly. It was like showing cracks everywhere, and it was horrible. So I was like, for God's sake. So I've let that dry for as long as possible. I took it to work. Kind of got the arse with it, you know, not being able to get the many layers of paint off of it, and eventually borrowed a friend's Air Mini DA, which is great because it managed to get into all the nooks and crannies. And I'm not patient, so I can't sit there for ages rubbing paint down by hand. I need something that's quick and fast acting, and normally quick and fast acting on plastic means it destroys the plastic too. So I was having trouble finding something that would do the job well and relatively quickly. But that's all done now, and it's all the paint is taken off of it, and tomorrow we should be putting some plastic primer on it and just crossing our fingers. Beauty of it being at work is we have a mini sort of heat source set up from where we paint wing mirrors and things like that. Wing mirror covers, you know, and door handles and small little pieces you have to replace on cars. So I can put it in there and give it a nice blast of heat from a sodium light, just like this one that we use. There's a little homemade setup we've got set up basically. So that's it. You know, paint isn't my strong point, so I'm leaving that until maybe either replace it or someone can professionally paint it, because my valeter at work has, you know, give it a little go over, and he just said no, it's always going to be milky because it's red plastic unless you paint it. So oh well, whatever. Like I say, it's not perfect anyway. We got a crack down there which is repaired at the back, but you know, it's visible. You know, we've got little marks and things. So it's not going to be perfect, but I want it to be as good as I can get it. So the next stage on going back to the engine conversion now, we're going to remove this engine again, but before we do that, we're going to mark up everywhere around here, down in these holes, you know, what material is actually exposed through the holes. Possibly even put the chain on just to make sure that everything lines up. And then I'm going to drop it out. We're going to cut the material out of here as best we can. This might be the problem of why we take the engine out in and out a few times. I'm going to try and do this in 2, maybe 3 attempts, this being the first one. So I'm fairly confident that if I do enough measurements and, you know, markings here, I should be able to cut enough material out of here first time to be able to refit the engine with that bar in place. And then we're going to mark up that bar. I'm going to take it all back out again, take it to my mate's house, who's a welder. He only does alley welding from home, fuck knows why, but I shall find out on Sunday evening when we have that done. So that'll be done Sunday evening, so hopefully the final fit will be Sunday evening, and then I'll probably be as excited as a kid at Christmas, so it'll probably be a late night for me in trying to get as much of this bike back together as possible. So that's that really. It's coming along well. It fits surprisingly easy. I was totally on my own. I used a jack which has got 3 wheels on it, and I used a block of wood, you know, to prop it up. There you go. And an axle stand. I'll put the axle stand at the front and just put it on the top here just to stop it falling forward too much. Then I slowly just raised it up using my foot to control the jack handle and just sort of, you know, holding it here and what have you. And that's it. I mean, it went really well. The only thing I managed to do is a tiny little chip right there, which, to be honest, I thought there's going to be no paint left on that rocker cover by the time I've got this in. And the same with the cover here. This has remained unscathed so far, and that was pretty soft paint when I put it on. So soft lacquer as well. So I'm hoping that yeah, that will remain like that. So that's that. Next episode will probably be engine fitted back in, possibly. I might do a bit of footage before that. But yeah, and then it's the plumbing in and getting it running. So catch you next time.